So a handful of you may have seen my first Path of Exile 2 series on YouTube titled, Can Path of Exile 2 Convert a Diablo 2 Veteran? On my live streams, a lot of you guys have asked me that question, did it convert me? And the answer is generally yes. I love Path of Exile 2. It's absolutely fantastic, and as a Diablo 2 veteran, it scratches a lot of those itches I have and offers a lot more than I had maybe expected, but I would say it's not a full replacement. I'll never fully replace Diablo 2. If anything, Path of Exile will fit nicely into off seasons, but I'll go through a bit more of my experience playing the game, as well as things I liked about it, things I disliked, and just other general thoughts. And as a full disclaimer, if you're watching this video, at the time of recording, the game is currently in version 0.4, so it's not even full release. It's very much early access. The game does have its fair share of bugs and a lot of mechanics that surely will be updated. There's still a lot of missing content. I won't weigh that too much into my thoughts here. I'm acknowledging that, and I'm well aware that early access games, you can't fully judge. At the time of recording this video, I'm sitting at 280 hours of playtime on Path of Exile 2, and that has given me time to level up 3 characters fully to reach the end game. My first of which was a witch. I selected her because I saw she had minions. It made me think of the necromancer in Diablo 2. Well, I didn't actually end up using the minions. I ended up picking Contagion because it sounded pretty strong. It reminded me of the Locust Swarm in Diablo 3 on the Witch Doctor. Well, it turns out that Contagion is a very powerful meta build, and I live stream all my playthroughs on Path of Exile, so I had chat assisting me, and stupidly, I think on my first playthrough, I let my viewers influence my build maybe a little bit too much. I intentionally tried not to take too much influence, but it was there. So I would say my very first playthrough of the game was maybe a little bit expedited. The witch felt powerful, but thankfully on my following 2 characters, I didn't. I completely winged my builds, leaning more into theory crafting, and that is something that I absolutely love doing in Diablo 2. You guys can see one of my ridiculous melee necromancer videos here on Diablo 2, and that is what I love doing in ARPGs. Coming up with a crazy concept and using the tools and mechanics offered to you to make it work, or at least make it somewhat viable. And that leads into my first positive point of Path of Exile 2. The capability to theory craft builds in this game is unlike Diablo 2. It's not even really comparable. You have so many tools at your disposal. You can pick a class, you can pick a weapon type, you can have a dream, and with enough determination and divine orbs, you can make it work. My third character, which is my current character, I'm on a sorceress, and I'm making a leap slam sorceress, and it's kind of working really well. I think that is the coolest thing, being able to theory craft in this game. If you're a fan of theory crafting builds as I am, I would say Path of Exile 2, if you're a new player, you will understand enough to make it work. There's this fantastic feature in the game with underlined text that you can highlight, which will give you a tooltip. When I was new, this allowed me to learn about certain mechanics, certain damage types, certain interactions, and it helps greatly with figuring out what tools you can piece together to make work. If you know in the back of your mind, well, I would like to do fire, I would like to deal fire damage, but I would also maybe want to inflict curses. Well, there you go. You go in the passive tree, you search curses, or you search fire, and you can scrub through all the nodes that have those keywords. Same thing with the skill gems. You can kind of hone in on what you're wanting to do with these features. So that's fantastic as a new player, not necessarily having to use a third-party resource to figure out where I can find a skill gem, you know? It makes it navigatable, which is really great. And it doesn't only end there. In terms of theory crafting and build diversity, well, the main thing in Path of Exile is that there are no classes. Well, there are ascendancy classes, but I mean, historically in Path of Exile, the devs created the game without wanting to have any class identity. And I think that's cool. Any class in this game can use any weapon, can use any skill gem. The only decisive factor is your ascendancy that you pick, which gives you some class specific abilities, and as well as where you start on the skill tree, which corner you start on. The campaign was enjoyable, and I've now played through it 3 times since it's mandatory on every new character you play. But I would say overall it's good. Maybe there's a couple quest lines that are a bit confusing as a new player. Sometimes you're sent to go fetch a relic or something, and there's nothing in game that tells you where you can find it. So my viewers would help me on my live streams, or presumably you could search it online. But some of the quests will be a bit confusing, but at the same time, I guess that incentivizes exploration. And there's quite a bit of it too. Looking at the map in game, you can see there are a ton of points of interest, not all of which are mandatory, but if you go and clear them, you will be rewarded with really good boss fights. The amount of bosses in this game, it's kind of crazy to me. Coming from Diablo 2, where the idea of bosses is kind of a joke, it's really great and refreshing to see Souls-like boss fights. There are a lot of very difficult bosses, some of which I would spend maybe up to an hour trying to clear. My first time fighting Jaman-Ra on my witch, I think took me 8 tries. On my warrior, maybe took me 7 tries. So there's a good challenge, and I think that's an absolutely fantastic part of Path of Exile's campaign. There's a lot of content throughout the campaign. I think it's really, really good. I ended up using WASD for my movement controls, and it was my first time ever using it. It's a feature that's also available in Diablo 2 Resurrected, which I've never used. I also come from playing a lot of League of Legends, which is very dexterous with your mouse, but it's nice to kind of lean back and be able to move your character with WASD. It saves the health of your wrists, which I'm thankful for, but it also just feels great in combat, and honestly, I may swap to WASD on Diablo 2. Another really great thing about Path of Exile is the marketplace. Now, on my first character, I was playing solo self-found, which I am a huge proponent of. The majority of my game time in Diablo 2, it's on single player. So I love that grind of having to find and craft all the items yourself. But on the flip side, having access to the market on my 2 most recent players is also great for being able to theory craft and make these ridiculous characters and test things out. Although I must say, I think the marketplace itself could use some improvements. It is very complicated to navigate as a new player. I kind of have a grasp on it now after 300 hours, but there's still a lot of settings on there that I don't even understand what they do. GGG, if you're listening to this, I would implore you to take a look at the marketplace that Dark and Darker has. Their marketplace is phenomenal. I would like to see the modifiers list automatically update depending on what item you're searching up. There's a ton of modifiers. I would estimate 70% of them which aren't even applicable to the particular item you're trying to search up. It would be great if that refreshes, as well as reverse item search. I know they probably have it planned, but it's not in the game, so if we could do a reverse item search, that would be great. The crafting in this game is really great, although I found it to be quite confusing at first. There are a lot of aspects to it, so I had to watch a bunch of videos to learn. My chat would help me kind of understand these things. If I were brand new, not having any assistance from my chat, I think I would feel intimidated by the crafting. Now, you could of course read, each crafting item and it explains it, but even then it's still a bit confusing. So it just requires a bit of research to fully understand it. But once you grasp it, crafting is very addictive. You have the ability to semi-deterministically modify your items so that it helps your build. And I think that's great. As long as you have the resources and the time to do it in game, you can eventually craft a best in slot piece. And what is a game discussion or review without talking about graphics? Look, this game looks phenomenal, and I wouldn't expect anything other from a modern ARPG in 2026. But that also ties into my first negative point of group play in this game is honestly kind of a joke, which sucks. I love playing an 8-man party in Diablo 2, clearing the Chaos Sanctuary, and actually being able to see what's on the screen. Well, you definitely can't see anything on the screen in this game. Even in a party of 2 or 3 players, good luck. You're not going to see anything with all these skill effects. It's a bit overwhelming. Even as a solo sometimes, depending on your build, you can still have screen wide just flashing everywhere, and it's too much. What the game needs is a setting similar to what we have in Bloons DD6, where we can scale down the FX. That would be great. That would solve the issue. But it's pretty crazy. If you're looking to do group play late game or end game, it's kind of absurd. And that also ties into the ridiculousness of group play and the amount of loot that's on the ground. Look at this clip. This is in the Temple, which is a league mechanic in the 0.4 patch. Look at the loot on the ground. How does this make any sense? Now, I'm well aware that loot filters are an integrated part of the game, and that can immediately solve this issue of the screen being covered in item names. But I think it goes beyond that. It's more about the principle of loot in the game. In any video game, does this make sense that one room can have hundreds, if not 1,000 items on the ground? Doesn't that just make loot way less valuable? Why not just cut the drop rate by 85%? We would still have dozens and dozens of items to look at, but this just feels ridiculous. I don't know if that's just me, but I could take the time and sort through every item and eventually find really great stuff, but is that good gameplay? Spending 30, 40, 50 minutes looking through all the loot? No. Lower the drop rate, and I think that would make loot feel valuable again. It would make me want to pick up that random blue item and identify it. Kind of how we do in Diablo 2, right? Now, one complaint that I had throughout my first couple of playthroughs, as well as my friend who recently picked up the game and had the same complaint, is the resetting maps. So in Path of Exile 2, if you're outside of an area for about 15 minutes, let's say, that area will reset, which you would then have to re-explore. A new player is punished by going to town, making whatever upgrades they might want, or maybe even reading about a mechanic, because there's so much to learn in this game. To then, when you go back to the zone, it's completely reset. You have to re-explore all of it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Exploration is fine. Killing more monsters, gaining more experience, getting more drops, it's obviously fine. But it just feels like a bit of a step back when, you spent 40 minutes clearing an area and then you have to do it all over again, simply because you didn't grab the waypoint in the next zone first. Now, I did learn to do that, and a tip for you guys if you're new, when you enter a zone, take a look at the map. You can see how many surrounding waypoints there are. Let's say there's 3. Before you finish in that zone, grab the 3 waypoints. That way, that one zone, even if it resets, you'll at least be able to access those other 3 waypoints without having to look through the entire zone again, right? And honestly, that's all I can say that I disliked about the game. I could probably add a couple more things like some of the bugs or maybe some of the interfaces that I don't like, but the game is in the 0.4 version, so I really can't judge them. I would assume the UI will change quite drastically, like on the marketplace that I was talking about, or even on the map. Some UI changes would be nice to make things more understandable. I could easily add a lot more points onto my list of positives, but for the sake of your ears and not having to be here all day, we'll leave it at that. Overall, I would say Path of Exile 2 is a phenomenal game, and I'm very glad I tried it out. I'm glad I got through my intimidation phase, scared of having to learn everything and get through the learning curve, but I did it, and honestly, it didn't take that long. There's definitely a learning curve, but there's a lot of resources in-game to help you learn these things. Although I must say, you will still need to access a lot of third-party resources, such as Path of Exile DB, which is like a wiki which could tell you about items and their modifiers and what they can roll. That stuff isn't accessible in-game yet. But that's kind of to be expected with an ARPG. There's a lot of information that can't all be baked into the game. But I'm very excited to see where Path of Exile ends up. I'm excited to try out the new content as GGG gives it to us, and I am definitely a Path of Exile player. Well, that's going to be it, and thank you guys so much for watching my video and listening to me ramble. I would like to also extend a thank you to everybody who's been showing support, subscribing on my YouTube and following over on Twitch, as well as showing up on my live streams. I appreciate you guys very, very much. We are almost at 500 subscribers, which is crazy. So we're going to keep going at it. We're going to keep playing Path of Exile. Going to continue making crazy builds. You can catch me live on Twitch and YouTube every Monday to Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, where we will be blasting more Path of Exile, doing more theory crafting, and just having a good time. Guys, hopefully we can see you there. Troy, have a good one.